Nick Ortner, I'm so excited to be talking to you again. We did the most amazing live recently. Your work is incredible, and I'm really excited to dive deeper into understanding tapping and helping the viewers understand more about tapping. It helps me. Let me hand over to the expert. So please introduce yourself once again to my viewers and my listeners and tell us something about you that's not in your bio.
Ooh, something that's not in my bio. I don't know if it's in my bio. We were talking before we started that you're from South Africa originally.
Yes.
I was born in Argentina. So
okay.
I was born in Buenos Aires. I lived there until I was about to turn 8. So Spanish was my first language. Just young enough to, people don't know, I don't have an accent in English, though my wife is convinced I say a couple words with like a little Spanish accent.
No. Now that you said it, I'm going to listen for that, of course.
You're going to listen to it. Exactly. Yeah, so that's not often in my bio. And we'll talk about the app later and everything we're doing, but we just released our first meditation in Spanish in the app.
That's wonderful.
And it was recorded by my mother. So
that is so special.
Yeah.
That is really special. Wow, that's amazing. I love that. Okay, and tell them who you are a little bit. I mean, I've done your bio and they've heard that, but just tell them who you are. What motivates you? How did you get into this?
Yeah, I found tapping, my first exposure to it was right around 2003. I was actually at a Tony Robbins event, and it was a leadership conference, and he came to speak for a little while. The event wasn't around him. He came to speak, and he did a little demonstration of this tapping process. That was my first, and Tony's always ahead of the curve with psychology, energy medicine, different things. So 2003, he's using it, he's sharing it with people, and he'd been doing it for a while. So from that, I got inspired. I started researching it, just reading books, going online, trying it for myself. I mean, that's what's so fabulous about the technique, that it's like, okay, let me see what happens. Trying it with friends and family. The running joke at the time was, don't say anything is wrong around Nick, because he's going to make you tap on it. So
I love it. You said that in the Instagram live. I'm sorry to interrupt you. And every time that now someone is a little bit worked up with something in my family, I just say, well, Nick will tell you to tap. So
exactly. I've learned that lesson with my wife. I don't tell her to tap. She can find it on her own, you know, at the right time. But yeah, I started using it just as a passion project. I mean, at the time I was doing web development and design. I had a small marketing company. Then I got into real estate. I was buying, fixing up and selling properties. So this was just a side passion. It was just like, I'm just into this stuff. And then in 2007, on just a day of inspiration, I've been so excited about tapping. And it was right around the time when The Secret had come out. So a lot of people remember The Secret. It was just booming film. And I knew that a lot of people who were in The Secret were actually into tapping, that it was a technique that they used. So I said to myself, why don't I make a documentary film about tapping? Now, this is with no filmmaking experience, no money. I basically bought $40,000 worth of camera equipment on credit cards and credit lines. I can remember so distinctly, these moments in our lives that are just like...
We just think, what?
Yeah. I remember opening up, being in my 500 square foot apartment with my girlfriend at the time, opening up boxes and saying, is this a light? Like, this looks like a light stand. Like, how? And now it's easier to film stuff. I mean, with your iPhone, you could film quality movies. But 2007, we had big bulky cameras. It was just some HD stuff. We had these heavy light kits. I enlisted my younger sister, Jessica, who had just dropped out of college, and one of my best friends, Nick Polizzi, who my thinking was he went to graphic design school for college, so maybe he can film. It was like, he was the closest person I had in that field. But it goes to show what inspiration and passion can do. Because that's we were 3 young kids. I was 29 at the time, 28, 29 years old. I'm about to turn 42 now. And we were 3 young kids just setting out to document this technique. So that's what we did. We spent about a year making the film, interviewing experts like Jack Canfield and Cheryl Richardson, Dawson Church.
Oh yeah, I was going to mention Dawson Church done some really great. I love his scientific studies and how just how EFT changes your genetics and everything. He's really a leader in the field.
He is, and he has the best laugh in the world. If you haven't heard
Oh my gosh, it's
it's
worth just googling Dawson Church to listen to his laugh.
Yeah, and I think there's actually a website where you can do Dawson Church laugh, and it's just a loop of his laugh.
His laugh, it's something else. Yeah,
it's healing. It's a healing technique by itself.
Totally. They should be actually looping it through every time some of these politicians talk. They should just put Dawson Church's laugh going through. That's a good idea, isn't it?
I like it. So we interviewed all these experts. And then I think what makes our film different, has made the last decade of tapping different, is within the film, we took 10 people from around the country who had never experienced tapping before. And who had 30 years of chronic back pain, fibromyalgia. Renee, whose girlfriend had passed away in a car accident where he was driving the car 3 months earlier. Renee just we put up flyers in the Bronx. He saw a flyer that like, we're looking for people who are struggling. And it just, so people who have had traumatic experiences in physical pain, anxious, overwhelmed, trouble sleeping. And we brought these people from around the country. We went to their house beforehand. So we filmed them and showed their x-rays and everything they're dealing with. And then they came to Connecticut for a 4-day event and we tapped with them and we filmed it. And we edited that into the film showing the results. Now, what's crazy about it is, I think back on the money that it cost to put that event together, fly all over the country. And it's a little crazy to think we're just going to bring 10 random people in and film it to see what happens, because it might not work, right? But I think I was just so confident at the time because I'd seen so many results with tapping, which is why you see John wake up in the second morning of the event say, I'm pain-free for the first time in 30 years. The second day of being here, 30 years. It's the first morning he's woken up pain-free. So it's that kind of result and story and life change. That's what we documented in the film. And then we've spent the past 12 years since it came out writing books and having online programs and an app, all just with the purpose of saying, how do we share this technique with people that need it most?
I love it. What a great story. To have someone who's been suffering with pain, like fibromyalgia for 30 years or whatever it was that he had. And that's one of the things they don't know how to help people. Pain management is an area that's just, they're turning to acupuncture, acupressure, tapping, because the medications are not working and the side effects are so terrible. So that alone, Nick, it makes so much sense. I come from a scientific background, as you know. I'm a researcher. And really, I see the quantum physics, and Dawson Church talks a lot about that. This quantum physics is the most fundamental of sciences, the most accurate of sciences. And tapping is based on that. It's basically taking energy that is in us and being able to use it correctly. Okay, so you're the expert, not me in that. I've just read a lot about it. But so what exactly...
I want to hear from you. Together. Well, this is what I love about these conversations, that we each come from different perspectives, and together we're all trying to figure out what this is, right? At the same time, in the same way that we're trying to figure out all sorts of things in our body.
Exactly.
I started my second book, which was the tapping solution for pain relief.
Love it. Mm-hmm.
I started with a headline from the New York Times that I had seen that said, researchers or scientists or doctors or whatever it was, discover a new ligament in the knee. And this was a New York Times headline. And I said to myself, what do you mean? Like, don't we know what's in the knee? Like, haven't we done hundreds of thousands of knee
studies
surgeries?
Of knees? Yeah.
Like, don't we know enough? But no, just a couple of years ago, they discovered something they didn't know was there or that was separate from it. So we're constantly learning about our bodies.
Honestly, the brain, I've been studying the brain for 38 years. And I can tell you now that what I was trained in the 80s and what I know now, it's two different stories completely. And it's every day that this is definitely how the brain works. This is definitely how neurons work. Now, that's completely old science. So we've got to keep our minds open. And also, no one person has the answer. And this is why I do what I do. I collaborate with people like yourselves so that we can bring a collective knowledge to humanity to be able to manage our incredible brains and bodies and lives, So I think it's so important.
So to the brain, because I think that's where we're seeing a lot of things. So we call this technique tapping. If you're seeing me on video, I am physically tapping on these endpoints of meridians. If you're listening to audio, just a drumming of these endpoints of meridians of the body. And what the latest research shows is that when we do this while focused on the stress, the anxiety, the pain, we send a calming signal to the amygdala.
Exactly.
So we are in essence telling the brain and the body it's safe. It's a somatic physical thing. So as opposed to saying, let me try to think my way to positive thoughts, which is wonderful. I love positive thinking, but it's like we were talking earlier. When you're anxious, when you're struggling, when you're stressed, when there's a problem in front of you, it's hard to make that turn. Tapping just helps facilitate that turn, helps take the edge off that pain, helps take the edge off that memory. If I mentioned John earlier from the movie who had 30 years of chronic back pain. He was a Vietnam veteran. And the reality is he'd been carrying Vietnam on his shoulders for 30 years. He had multiple surgeries. So he had all the medical interventions, taken pain medication, done all these things. It wasn't until he stopped and through this work, healed some of the past, thought about the things that happened, thought about the things that he was angry about. It's what therapy does. This somatic component, this physical component, is just pushing that therapy a little bit deeper. It's just allowing the body to rest a little bit more. It's allowing the brain to feel safe. So when John did that with those past memories, something unlocked within his body. His body began to relax for the first time in 30 years. And then that's when the body heals.
Totally agree with you, because from the research that I do in the field that I move in as well, which is crossing over in your field too, every time that you build a memory, go through an experience, it's your mind, and then it works in the brain. So they're not the same thing. They're separate but inseparable. And then your brain controls your body. So with quantum physics, we understand that experience that John had in Vietnam, all those experiences, as he was experiencing them, were becoming physical memories in the brain, embodied in every cell of the body in an instant, plus built in the 99% unconscious. So it's in 3 places. Your memories are not just in, these vague things. They are physical structures in your brain. They have a neurochemical and they have a DNA representation in every cell of your body. And you have a quantum representation in your unconscious mind. So when you talk about tapping and releasing that, it's like, if the way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, I was trying to explain this to one of my daughters the other day, because she works out a lot and I worked out and pulled my hamstring because I was trying to keep up with my daughters, trying to sprint like they do, and didn't quite work as well as I thought it would do because I wasn't quite as fast as them. And I said that pain that you feel with relaxing my body and doing massaging and whatever, I was releasing the pain out of my body. That's what you're doing with the pain. That's that physical pain from the damaged muscle. You're doing that. So when you're doing the tapping, if I'm understanding correctly, you're releasing that pain that's built up, because that energy we see from quantum physics and we see from the neuroscience, the QEEGs, you can see that pent up energy in the brain because the brain waves flow incorrectly. And when someone starts getting a level of mind management and you start changing the energy, which is not something weird. If people think energy is weird, then don't use a cell phone. Don't use Zoom. Don't use the internet.
This is energy happening.
Don't be alive. Don't eat food, because that's all energy. So I always want to just put people to, don't freak out when you hear the word energy. Energy is what pretty much keeps humans going. It's everything. So I understand that tapping is one of those factors that can help tremendously towards breaking down the energy. Now, have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, 100%. And I love that combination. This is we are letting go of things from the past. We are releasing anxieties about the future. Sometimes we're even rewriting the past. So I remember working with Bobby. She came up on stage and this was actually another pain relief event. Tapping isn't just for pain, but what's great about working with pain is it's such a doorway to other things. And then you can also see a quantum, like a concrete results, because you say you were in pain before, now you're not. So Bobby came up and she had knee pain for decades. And we started tapping on it, got some relief just tapping on the pain itself. And I forget how I found my way there, but we found our way to her 5th birthday party, where her father said, "I wish you'd never been born."
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Right. So she had the picture, she had the image, the cake, dad coming in, whatever she did to act up, to trigger him and all his traumas and all his thing. So first it was doing the tapping through that event to try to release some of that energy. Then once some of that energy got cleared, and a lot of it is, intuitive in the space and the time, and you sort of go where that unconscious and subconscious leads you. We started rewriting that memory. So she lost a lot of power, a lot of dignity, a lot of self-respect when she was 5 years old and her father said that. And you could tell that she was carrying that around. So we started doing tapping and then rewriting it. So for example, I'd say, okay, he came up to you and he said that. What do you want to do now once she had more strength? And she said, I took the cake and I threw it in his face. Right. So it was like she needed that moment.
She needed it.
Where, when she was 5 years old, she wasn't able to stand up, speak her truth, say this is wrong, say I'm angry at you. And this is what we can do even to things that have happened 5 minutes ago. One of the things that I love about tapping is that we can process these emotions like anger, which, hey, if you're angry, you need to process it in some way. And sometimes the healthiest way to process it isn't to call up the person and swear at them and scream at them, because that's not right.
That could create a whole new issue.
Exactly. Now you're compounding the problem. You're adding anger to anger. What do we do in that case? So when it's like, I am so angry, we tap and we talk and we process it and we let it go. And then people find, oh, you know what? I do want to say something, but I want to say kindly. Or, you know what? I don't need to say something. I want to move on from it. Or I want to find a new friend, or we get our resources back to make these decisions in our lives. So that's what we did with Bobby. We let her act out the places where she could. First, it was anger. It was creating power. And then it was sadness. And you can see how, as we do this tapping, the emotions come up and we feel anger, and then she just feels sadness. And she says, I just feel so sad for that 5-year-old. I feel a deep grief about it. And then that grief begins to let go and process, and she finds empowering meaning to it. Well, that was horrible, but you know what? It made me stronger in this way. So it's this beautiful progression that oftentimes we see in a decade of work and therapy and reading the books, but we can move through it so much more quickly because we allow the body to relax, to acknowledge these feelings. And then the outcome of it, besides her feeling amazing, was her knee pain was completely gone.
I love this. I love the fact that you have integrated basically this our deep spiritual nature and our physical, because you can't separate those two. They separate but inseparable. And that's such a funny, you're not doing a Descartes separate, but we're doing a Descartes and we're doing a reintegration where we have to recognize that your body is going to house what you're experiencing in your mind and the events that you go through, and that our body is how we can often tune in to what we're going through. And so that's what I love about the tapping, is that is a way of helping to release that. You know, Nick, I know you probably know about this, but in the first 60 to 90 seconds that you hear something. So as that child in that moment, what was her name? With the birthday, Bobby, with the birthday cake. As you hear the first 60 to 90 seconds, you have, it's all quantum energy. There's neurotrans, neurochemical responses, electromagnetic responses, blood chemistry responses. It all happens incredibly fast at quantum speeds, way faster than the speed of light. And in that state where your brain is thrown out of equilibrium and it's trying to rebalance in order to be able to deal, there's a lot of that physical almost overrides our ability to think clearly. So therefore, to respond, to be reactive in that moment is one of the most dangerous things that we can do, because we will say the wrong thing. Okay, now a young child, what do they know? They don't have the experience. So to throw that cake. So in other words, what you're having is there's this burst of energy, and energy doesn't go. It gets transferred. So the young child should never be disciplined for doing something like that if there isn't a reason behind it. You know, obviously you can't go throwing cakes at people, but there's got to be a reason behind that, and you need to help them process. As an adult, we have to learn to not react in that first 60 to 90 seconds. And people often ask me, how do I do that? And since I've known about tapping from Dawson Church years ago, and then you really make it very practical. You just bring it to another level that just makes it user-friendly. Like every day, any minute, any time, user-friendly. For me, I see that as, okay, you're in that moment. What can I do? Positive thinking. I don't even agree with positive thinking from this anyway. It doesn't, but you need to do something with the physical energy. And that's where I think tapping, stretching, whatever, but I think tapping is more powerful because it really goes to the quantum level of how we function as humans. And we've got to get to that quantum level, which is the most fundamental level. So you get your fundamental, I don't know.
No, I love that.
That's my 5 cents.
No, I love it. I mean, you're giving so many insights. And I love what you say about the first 60 to 90 seconds. In the documentary film, there's an EFT expert called Rick Wilkes. And he has this quote that I loved when we filmed it and we used it in the trailer. And he said something to the effect of, if we can be traumatized instantly, right? Like there's something else, why can't we be healed in a day, an hour, a minute? So the idea that we were traumatized in, for example, a car accident, and it was a traumatic, horrible 30 seconds. That's all it took, 30 seconds to have this deep impact. But then why does it have to take 20 years to get over it? Why can't we apply? And this is really these quantum techniques. Why can't we heal more quickly?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, so how does it work? What do you do?
Yeah. So should we have a little experience?
Yeah, do that. Because I know you say you start with like negative statements, and there's a whole process. So maybe how do you do it?
Yeah. So the basics, first step is, what are you working on? Right. So you can do it by yourself. I'm anxious about, a pandemic, right? I feel antsy being stuck at home. The more specific you can get on stuff, the easier it is for your brain to make that switch. So if you're angry at someone, then it's very specific. You can really make a big switch. If you say my whole life is super stressful, you can tap and feel better, but it's not necessarily, really activating those parts of your brain that we want to move. So if you're anxious about something, what specifically? Money. I lost my job. I don't know what's next. Uncertainty, the future. We talked about pain. If you feel pain in your body now, you could pick that as your first target. So we start with our target. What's the thing that we want to release in some way? And then once we have that, we give it a number on a scale of 0 to 10. And this is really helpful and important part of the process, because what will often happen, I remember the times that I've tapped with people and I forget to do the number, and they're tapping and they're super angry at their mom, and we tap for 20 minutes and then they're great. And I say, wow, that's amazing. You're not angry anymore. And they'll be like, I wasn't really that angry.
Oh gosh. Okay. They forgot. Yeah.
Yeah, because the switch,
The
and it's
shift has
true though, the
happened.
shift is so, usually when we overcome things, and we can all think about the challenges we've had in the past, and once we overcame them, we just move on to the next thing, right? It's just like, it's just so easy, which is why it's important to stop and recognize, hey, I've gotten this far up on this mountain that I've been climbing. Like, who am I? How am I different than 10 years ago? All too often, we only see the thing that's ahead of us and don't see everything that we've accomplished in the past. So the number is a short way to do that, to say, okay, this is the change I have. So we have our target. I'm anxious and I feel it in my chest. It's hard to breathe and it's an 8. Or I'm stressed about where my next paycheck is going to come from and it's a 10. So we have our target, we have our number, and then we do the tapping. Now I'm going to use general language as we go along together, and you'll see that works great. Part of the tapping process, what we do in the app, what we do in other places, is getting really specific. So, if you're tapping on weight loss, we want to do specific language around how you feel about your body. All right, but for now, we're just going to go general language. So we start by tapping on the side of the hand. It's called the karate chop point. Whatever hand feels comfortable to you. And if you're listening in, I'm just tapping on the outside of the hand, below the pinky, right on the meaty part of the hand. I'm just going to tap repeatedly and then repeat after me. And will you be my echo?
I'll be your echo.
Fabulous. So tapping on the side of the hand. Even though I'm holding on to this stress.
Even though I'm holding on to this stress.
And it's hard to let it go.
And it's hard to let it go.
I choose to relax and feel safe now.
I choose to relax and feel safe now.
Even though I've been moving so fast.
Even though I've been moving so fast.
Trying to fix all my problems.
Trying to fix all my problems.
And it's really overwhelming.
And it's really overwhelming.
I choose to feel safe in my body now.
I choose to feel safe in my body now.
Even though I'm holding on to all this stress.
Even though I'm holding on to all the stress.
I love and accept myself.
I love and accept myself.
And we're going to tap through the points. If you haven't washed your hands, we have points on the face. So just skip them or pause and go wash your hands. And the new disclaimer that we have to have.
You have to have,
People get mad at me when I'm tapping on my face. They say, don't touch your face. If you wash your hands, you can touch your face.
I knew you were going to do this with me, so I already sanitized my hands just before. So
fabulous. So the first one is the eyebrow point. It's on the inside of the eyebrow, right where the hair ends and it meets the nose. And you can do 2 fingers of one hand, the other hand, or both hands. The meridians run down both sides of the body. And just tap gently. And I want you to take a moment to tune in to that stress, that anxiety, that pain. What's going on? What's the thing that you're most worried about? What are you trying to shift? Now we move to the side of the eye. It's not at the temple, a little further in, right on the side of the eye and the bone. Again, one side or both sides. Tapping gently and tuning in. Just thinking about your problem. We are giving a voice to this. We are acknowledging the stress in order to let it go. So we focus on it so we can activate it in the brain and then send that calming signal. Now under the eye. What are you worried about? What do you stress? Where's the pain? What are you holding on to? Think those thoughts now. And if your mind wanders, that's okay. Just bring it back to the thing that you're worried about. I'm anxious about work. I've got this pain in my back. I feel so much uncertainty about what's going on. Just think those thoughts now. We go under the nose, right underneath the nose, 2 fingers. Tapping gently, tuning into your body, breathing gently, thinking those thoughts. Sometimes they'll lead you to another thought. So you'll think, I'm anxious about this and that. Just allow them to come forward. Under the mouth, it's above the chin and that little crease in there. Tuning into your body, just noticing how much stress you've been holding on to. In every cell of your body, how this issue has been stuck. Tune into this issue and ask yourself, what if you could let it go? Now for the collarbone point, feel for the 2 little bones of the collarbone. You go right below it. You can do with all 10 fingers of both hands. Tapping gently, tuning in, thinking about that issue, the stress, the anxiety, the overwhelm, the pain. 2 points left underneath the arm, 3 inches underneath the armpit, either side of the body, right on the bra line for women. Tapping gently, thinking about the stress. And the last point, right at the top of the head, tuning in, feeling safe in your body. Now we'll do one more round. We'll go back to speaking out loud, saying positive affirmations. So back to the eyebrow. It's safe to let this go.
It's safe to let this go.
Side of the eye. It's safe to relax.
It's safe to relax.
Under the eye, even though I have this issue.
Even though I have this issue.
Under the nose, what if I let it go?
What if I let it go?
Under the mouth, what if I completely let it go?
What if I completely let it go?
Collarbone, from every cell in my body.
From every cell in my body.
Under the arm, right now. Top of the head, right now.
Right now.
And we could take a gentle breath in and let it go. So that is 2 really quick rounds, and then we tune back in. So now we focus again on the pain, the anxiety, the stress, and we say, oh, it was an 8, and now it's a 7 or a 6 or a 5. Or this, I started working on one thing, but this other thing came up. It's one of the beautiful things that happens with tapping, where we think this is what we're stressed out about. But when we actually get quiet and quiet some of that chatter, all of a sudden we find, well, there's something else going on that's a much bigger issue. And then we can work on that.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's unpack what you've done. I mean, everything you said, I'm so relaxed now, I must say. It's really great because I've got a whole day of interviews. So this is a good state to be in. I know, I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about, and we've touched on it, but let's talk about the science behind tapping. Let's unpack it. So why the tapping, what's the science, why the negative statements first, just the stages that you went through, if you can unpack that from a scientific angle.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, we start with even though whatever's happening. And I think there's such power in that statement. So even though I'm so angry, even though I'm in pain, even though I hate myself, even though I can't do anything right, like we are giving a voice to these thoughts that are running through our minds. So even though, and then we have the counteracting statement, or really not even counteracting, almost a supportive statement. Even though I'm angry, I choose to relax now, or I love and accept myself. The love and accept myself is one of the foundational ones. A lot of people struggle with it right off the bat. So they'll go, we need to just relax a little bit and choose to relax before we can love and accept ourselves.
Okay. Good one. Right? Yeah.
But even though whatever's going on, I love and accept myself. There's a grace to that statement, to just saying, I'm taking this moment to acknowledge that I'm human, acknowledge the things that are wrong, acknowledge the things that I'm struggling with. And I can acknowledge all those things while still relaxing, while still accepting myself, while still loving myself. It breaks down some of those barriers to perfection, to I'm the only one struggling with these issues. So really that is the foundational statement in it. So we bring that up, we establish that foundation. And then as we tap through the points, and if I was working on a specific issue with someone, as I said, we would get more specific. So if they were stressed about something that happened a week earlier with their boss, we would actually bring up that memory. As you were talking about earlier, that memory is encoded in there, and it's encoded with all sorts of other emotions and issues and things that come with it. So we would bring it up. We would see the memory. Now we're activating it. We're activating that anxiety, the stress, the memory, the future anxiety. And then we're doing the tapping just to send that calming signal. We start with the negative, again, to give it a voice. And then we find there's no perfect, some people might have felt, I needed to do 5 more rounds on the negative. This was just a demonstration, right? But what usually happens is we'll get to the point, let's say we start at a 7 or 8 intensity. Once we get it to a 3 or a 4, or maybe even a 5, that's when we can begin to say some of those positive statements, and they can land a little bit, right? They might not land fully if you're at a 5. But if you're a 5 or a 4 or a 3 or a 2, you can say, I choose to release this now, or it's safe to release this. And there's part of you that is in alignment with it. Now, to me, the difference between that patience almost and the processing of the emotion, as opposed to going, okay, I know I'm angry, but I shouldn't be, because I'm into self-help and I'm into personal development. I'm into forgiveness. So even though I'm so angry at so-and-so, I shouldn't be. So I'm going to say, I forgive them. I'm peaceful. And if that anger is still hanging on there, then that statement is
cognitive dissonance. Yeah, total.
Complete cognitive dissonance. Your brain says, forget it. This is
your brain's actually in total stress from that statement because it's not true.
It's not true. And then it's just miserable. And then you get mad at yourself for not being a forgiving person, a kind person, a loving person. So there's, even in just a few minutes process, there's just a an acceptance of the self, of our human frailties, of our flaws, but then connecting to that higher quantum energy, to the energy that says, okay, I've expressed how I feel. I've allowed myself to feel these emotions. I've accepted myself with them. I've explored what happened. I've sent that calming signal. And now I can begin to move towards the positive.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so that's the process, and you've unpacked that beautifully for people. Just a little bit more about the science. I know that it impacts the sort of genetics and all kinds of things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
it's so interesting.
I mean, there was one research study that I think 72 genes, I can pull it up to read the actual headline for you, but 72 genes were impacted.
This is one of Dawson Church's studies, I think, that he did.
I don't know who. Yeah, it was Dawson's team. Yeah, Dawson's, the leader. We funded a lot of his research. He's the one that gets out there and does it beautifully. So the headline is Tapping Positively Influences Gene Expression in 72 Genes. 1 hour of tapping increases immunity and decreases inflammation. And some of these genes included were suppression of cancer tumors, regulation of type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, antiviral activity. I'm not going to make any claims right now. It's not a cure for anything. Antiviral activity. Hey, take it out, take a look.
Well, it's boosting the immune system. So you boost the immune system. That's really what you're doing. You're just setting up an internal environment that is going to make you stronger. That's really what you're saying.
End of story. And no one can argue that, right? When we do reduce stress, when we reduce these negative emotions, when we reduce anxiety, our immune system is going to be stronger. One study, and I think I mentioned this to you in our Instagram live that I just saw, was a cortisol study. And so cortisol, master stress hormone, most of us release way too much of it. It's got huge downstream effects, including putting on extra belly fat. So that's one that none of us like. So the more you can reduce the stress. In this study, they had 3 groups, and it was a replication study. So this was actually replicating one of Dawson's earlier studies. Dawson was the first one to do cortisol. They spit into a tube. The tube analyzes cortisol. One group did an hour of tapping. The other group did an hour of psychoeducation. So learning about the body's stress response. And then the third group was a control group. They read magazines for an hour. The tapping group had a 43% decrease in cortisol in an hour, which is just huge number.
It's huge.
It's a big number.
Because when that cortisol drops, it may go up again, but at least you can start focusing. Yeah. Because the cortisol downstream effects in the brain and the cognitive functioning is...
Such a good point. Yeah. If our cortisol is high, that cognitive function is out the window.
The window.
So the psychoeducation group, 19%, which to me shows, hey, this podcast right now, I'd almost consider psychoeducation, right? We're learning about things. So your cortisol is probably going down, just learning positive things
exactly
that can improve your life. And then the control group, reading magazines, their cortisol went up 2%. So we can see that reading magazines, and I might have made this joke on Instagram that I want to see it done with Facebook. So the control group, yes. I want them to be on Facebook, reading the feed and just seeing how much their cortisol shoots up.
Exactly. And Facebook and Instagram and the whole comparing yourself to everyone else, how that changes our physiology. Absolutely. They did Nick just talking about this, the whole isolation thing and us like connecting, the impact if everyone's so worried. But here you and I don't even know each other, but we do know each other. It's the second time we've connected, but there's a deep, meaningful connection that's happening because we're intentional about it. And the research shows that the neurophysiological reactions in your body and my body to talking in this way is the same as if we were actually doing this interview in person. So that's what come out of this most recent time. So the tapping this is just communication, but the tapping is, what I'm saying is neurophysiological reactions happen immediately. This is true. This is real. You're seeing it. The results are showing it, which is fantastic. Let's talk a little bit more about the chronic pain, how the tapping helps with the chronic pain, because you've spoken quite a bit about that. Yep. And you gave the example of John, who had 30 years of pain. Can you talk a bit more about that? And I know you've got a whole book dedicated to that, haven't you?
I do, and we have in our app, we have 10 pain meditations. I just recorded another 10, all on specific things, because everyone wants even though it works for pain generally, people want, okay, what do I do for my shoulder? I need the shoulder pain one.
Okay.
So I did specific ones because they want to, hear for their issue and their thing. So those are coming out soon. But I think there's a lot of things happening in pain. One, and if we think about pain, if there's a new acute pain that you don't know where it's coming from, go see a doctor. It could be a tumor, right? So let's put that out there that we want to get checked up and make sure that there isn't a tumor in your head, right?
Exactly. So this is not replacing medical advice. This is just giving you another tool in your toolbox to manage.
And this is especially powerful when a doctor says, I don't have anything for you, right? You've been in pain for 30 years. We've tried 3 surgeries.
Everything.
We've taken out bones. We've put in bones. We've, done this. We've done
tried
that.
every medication, tried everything.
We don't have anything. Nothing's working. And it also begs the question, why is nothing working? How come if I cut my finger with a paper cut or even a deeper cut a week from now, it's going to be healed up? The worst case, if I had a bad cut, there might be some scarring, right? There might be residue of how it healed, but it's really unlikely that I cut my finger and it hurts for the next 30 years. So something is happening in that healing mechanism where...
Very good example.
With chronic pain, that pain signal is just not turning off. Now, what also happens with pain, and this goes back to the brain, I mean, pain is in our brain. We could start with pain, say, from an accident, but then our body gets so looped into that expectation, our brains just know how to do pain.
Okay, you say it's such a profound thing. I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to repeat your statement. Our brain gets looped into the expectation of the pain, and that's exactly what happens. And we're building it in as a network and in our subconscious and in our body. So we're building it in 3 places, that expectation. And the tapping can help. It's one of the ways you can help release that.
It does it exactly. So with pain, sometimes we'll tap on when it started, if there was an accident. I remember Patricia, also from our event, she had fractured her L1 vertebrae, and it was a first date. It was a boating accident. So guy took her out on a boat, was showing off, hitting the waves. He flies through the air.
Oh gosh.
Fractures her L1 bottom vertebrae, just crushes it. So she obviously has surgery. They piece it back together. She had rods and screws in her back. Her doctor said, you'll never be able to do yoga again. You'll be in pain for the rest of your life. And I remember I was sitting down with my sister looking through we had hundreds of applications for this event, and something drew me to Patricia. She had her x-rays in there and she was young and vibrant. It seemed like a good example. And my sister said, but she fractured her L1. Like, she has bones and she's got rods and screws. Like, how's tapping going to help her? So I used the big brother veto, because I'm 7 years older than her. I said, no.
Big brother veto. I like that one.
Yeah. I'm bringing her in. I don't know. I just have a feeling about it. And she did the tapping on the accident. She did the tapping on the actual sensation. So she did tapping that was like, even though I have these rods and screws in my back, I accept myself. I accept what happened. I accept these things in my back. And not only did her pain go away completely, what she was blown away about was that she felt like she had a battery pack in her back. Like, she had the sensation in her back of these rods and screws. They were very clear to her. That sensation went away completely. So something changed in the chemical reactions, in the electrical transmissions,
the dendrites of the brain.
The dendrites of the brain that said, no longer notice that you have a battery pack in your back, right? No longer feel it. She went back to doing yoga. She went back to being pain-free. Last I checked on her was 3 or 4 years ago, which was a decade after it was filmed, and she was pain-free. So,
okay. So did she ever have another date with that guy? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I think that was it. I think. It wasn't a happy ending where they got married or anything like that.
I had to ask that. Okay, last question. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up, and this is just the beginning. There's so much more to discuss. What about weight loss? Because you threw that in, and I know that there's listeners and viewers that are wanting to know, how do I tap away the excess weight, excess weight,
okay,
or whatever.
Exactly, extra. So my sister, who I've mentioned a couple times, worked with my brother and sister and mom and dad.
So
it's
good.
A whole family thing now. And she wrote, her first book was The Tapping Solution for Weight Loss and Body Confidence, because she lost a lot of weight using tapping. Actually, a couple of years after making the film and being in tapping, she finally said, okay, I have to do this for myself.
Wow.
There's been a couple fMRI scans with cravings. So Petta Stapleton, a researcher in Australia, put people in a machine, showed them a cookie or a cake or something, saw the parts of their brains that lit up when they saw that. Then they did tapping, and then there was a control group, obviously. The tapping group goes back in, sees the cookie and cake, and that part of the brain doesn't light up. So we have the ability with tapping to look at these things. What are the emotional connections we have with food? How are we? Stress eating, the pandemic pounds stress eating, right? So the more we bring our bodies back in balance, the more we naturally choose better foods, make better decisions for ourselves, lower that cortisol. So that's naturally going to make it so the body doesn't put on weight. There's so many different mechanisms and doors through which tapping supports weight loss.
Oh gosh, you talk about bringing the brain back in coherence, and I'm just seeing these head maps that we've just, in our clinical trial that I'm just busy analyzing now. We've got the head maps of people after 21 days of doing mind management. Yeah. We see the brain coming back into balance. We see coherence and symmetry occurring, and they're still going through stuff, but there is this change happening. You can actually see it on that. So it's Nick, this has been amazing. How can people find out more about you?
So our main website is The Tapping Solution, or thetappingsolutionapp.com. We have a free app. It's available on iOS and on Apple and Google Play. There's 25 free meditations right now just around coronavirus anxiety.
Wow, fantastic.
Keep putting out stuff.
Thank you.
Also, we made the app free for 6 months for healthcare workers, first responders, teachers, and then we just added teachers and mental health professionals, because I got so many messages. You've probably seen them from mental health professionals who are doing Zoom calls all day and are just drained beyond belief, because it's just a different way of working. So if you go to thetappingsolutionapp.com and you're one in that category, you can get 6 months for free. And then Instagram at Nick Ortner, and then Facebook and Ortner.
We'll put all those links in the show notes. Thank you, Nick. As usual, it's been such an inspiring discussion, and I enjoy it every time talking to you. It's so much fun, and I learn so much more. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and your time. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Me too.
Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.